There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, welcome back to Reignite Your Soul podcast. I am your host, Laura Plahuta, and we're here expanding our mind, opening our hearts, and embodying an entirely new way of being. And I am super stoked for this episode. I have Dmitry here, who has been my astrologer for the last couple of years. And he has graciously decided to come on here today to share the magic of what astrology is, share about his story and about some of the big transits and stuff that are going on currently in the world. So thank you so much for being here, Dmitry.
You are welcome. I'm very happy to be here.
So awesome. So I'd love it. Like, would you be open to introducing yourself? You've been doing astrology now for like over 30 years and you have so much experience. I know you're very, very passionate about it and always learning. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your story, like how the heck you got into astrology and why you're so passionate about it.
I don't even know where to start. Like I've always been, as far as I remember myself, being interested in this since the first charts I think I started to see. It was at first, of course, the common charts, like what everybody reads. But I kind of intuitively saw something in it. I understood the system behind it, since I'm always interested in kind of like world's order and how things are organized in the universe and so on. So I decided that my future learning should be in that direction. And then I dedicated myself to this. Now, with the work-well astrologer, I mean, every astrologer would probably agree with me that you never can stop learning. I mean, it's an ongoing experience. And frankly, regardless how much we know already about astrology, every new chart, personal chart, presents something new. Like there is always something to that. Every person is unique, every destiny is unique, every situation is unique. So you always see those combinations that frankly never repeat in the sky. So everything is always new and always the subject of interpretation. Okay, and one thing that I find the most amazing about astrology is that these formulas always work. I know that's addressing mostly people who are disbelievers, but just like math always works, astrology always works. So when you can blame that something didn't come through exactly as astrologer says, that's a blame of interpretation. But if you go into the hindsight bias and see how exactly it's supposed to be, like when you analyze it after it happened, all the astrological components always confirm that it was exactly by the formula. So formulas always work. It's always a question of interpretation. Okay, and the more experience you get as an astrologer, the more accurate you become. It's always a question of that. Okay.
And where was it that you did all of your training and stuff, Dmitry? Like
that was back in Ukraine. Well, Ukraine, Russia. Then it was not really at war at that time, so it was kind of back and forth there. I've had amazing teachers and I would say coaches about this because. And funny thing is that most of them actually were university professors and usually physical, mathematical, astronomical. So it's kind of math related disciplines that they were teaching usually in universities or being in scientific labs and so on. And on this, like as a side knowledge, they always like sooner or later, as one of the professors of physics and mathematics told me, who was teaching astrology, said that if you're into it, sooner or later, you discover the astrology for yourself. Most, like I won't say everyone, but a lot of them actually go through that, through the math.
Wow, yeah, that's so cool. And what was it that like kind of kept you on that path? Like, so you were so interested in it, you went through, you kind of learned. And
imagine that you find finally something that can explain anything. Wouldn't you stick to that?
Totally. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you be able to explain more about like exactly like the math calculations? Like what the heck are you calculating in astrology?
The positions of the macro bodies around our globe. Okay. Imagine that like people influence each other, they communicate with each other in certain ways. Some of us are our friends, some of us are enemies, then it can switch and so on. Sort of like, I'm explaining that kind of a debilitated little way, but it's easier to comprehend it like this. In the same way, our planet is communicating with everything out there. Okay. And the moment in which anything appears on our planet has a chart. So technically, chart has the table that was created in a certain moment has a chart. Okay, the pen has a chart, the mouse has a chart, of course a human being has a chart, the event has a chart. Like that's why the astrologers, for example, do the muhurtas, like the best times when to launch something, okay, or to start something. So everything basically that has a place in time has a chart. And how do you explain really the time? By relationship at that moment of the planets towards the Earth. I mean, we see our time by the 24 hours that the globe is turning around itself. So that's a time from the position of one planet. Imagine that if you add 17, 18 planets on it, then you get much more specific version of time. And then you understand why the certain moment with a certain configuration can never be repeated in space, because there are so many macro bodies involved that by the time technically even sort of like or in theory, the same situation can appear again. There are millions of years supposed to come. And by then, probably some of those planets will not exist.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so complex and so deep that they've been using this for like how long? Like, how long does astrology go back in history that they've been using it?
Well, the history of astrology, well, there are two schoolings of astrology, by the way. One is called Western or tropical, or also known as Chaldean, Sumerian, some people call it this way. That's the one that most of us know. That's the one that works with signs, that says like, you know, March 20 to April 21, the Uran Aries and so on. So that's the one that more commonly used. But that is actually a build-up on top of much more ancient astrology, the one that is part of Ayurveda. And those who are interested in Indian holistic approach towards life, you know, health, healing, and everything, they know what is Ayurveda is. Well, part of that is called Jyotish or Vedic astrology. That's the one where everything started. And tropical is kind of already built up on top of that. Okay, just a second. Sorry. Hello? Can't talk right now. I have a session.
I love it.
Well, you'll understand.
Totally.
Yeah. So yes. So the Vedic, I work with both schoolings. Okay. Usually, people like astrology, most of the time, you find there are the followers of Vedic or followers of tropical. I find it kind of to be weird. And for people who understand software these days, like computer science and everything, imagine it like this: it's like Windows to DOS. Vedic astrology is a DOS. Everything stays on it, and build up on that is a tropical. Okay. To use only tropical and ignore DOS, you'll never be kind of a specialist enough to understand everything, okay? And being only Vedic also means that you are only judging things from one side. Of course, a lot of astrologers probably disagree with me on that, especially those who think that the Vedic is just good enough for everything, or tropical is good enough for everything. I love both of them, just to put a peace sign between those, you know, arguments. So yeah, I love both of them. I use both of them, and I choose for the question or for a specific chart, for the specific situation, which one to use more. But I always look at both.
Right. Wow. Yeah. It's cool that there's the two and that you kind of like use both of them to be able to do it. Cause I know like within our readings that we've done, like it completely blew my mind. So for everybody like listening, I started going to Dmitry at the end of 2020 was when I first started seeing.
I think it was earlier than that.
I think it was in the fall. I think.
Way earlier, I think.
No, I think it was only in 2020 because that was when Jen and I were together. Yeah. So, and it was insane, like being able to go through the first session and you like sharing all of this stuff. Or well, actually, first off, I went in there with my birth time and you're like, that's not your birth time. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're like, no, that's not your birth time. And he knew just by looking at the way that I looked, how that wasn't my birth time. We ended up moving the time of my birthday by, I think, 4 or 5 minutes. I think originally it was like 12:54 or something like that in the afternoon, and we moved it to 1:04, and everything was just so bang on with all of the big life events that happened in my life, like so many things, and it was just like, wow.
The reason for that is actually, and people not aware of that sometimes, and that's again where tropical astrology, by the way, kick in as well. The age degree there are 360 degrees in the circle, right? The same way in the 360 degrees in astrology, okay? Each degree has a very specific meaning. So in the rising, the ascendant, the point of the rising of the sun or whatever was rising at that moment when you were born is always shown on the appearance, okay? And each degree has a huge, actually massive information about all kinds of things, including the appearance. In the Persian astrology, well, which is mostly tropical, they used it as a calendar of animals and describing each degree as a specific animal. So you look a little bit like that animal, of course, in figurative form.
Do you remember what my animal was?
Yeah, sorry?
Do you remember what my animal was?
No, I have to look at the...
No, that's okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. We can address it next time, yeah.
Okay.
If you want. So there are all kinds of, like, there are certain lines of character, there are certain lines of appearance and so on, and it always shows. So when you see that the person in front of you doesn't really match that, you know, the degree is wrong.
That's so cool. Yeah, and it was just like incredible for anybody that's like really wanting to align more with what the heck they're here on this planet for. Like, it was massive for that, like being able to have clarity on that. And you'll find too, like I found when I did it, like it was already stuff that I knew intuitively, but it was just that confirmation of like what, like the information that you gave me. It was like massive to really confirm that and guide me moving forward.
And speaking of confirmation, I often find that with people, like when they come to me with a question and with a dilemma, and they don't know where to turn, after the session, they usually say to me, oh, you just confirmed something that I already understood or something that I already knew. That is always a hindsight bias. That's actually when you know that you've been on. When we have a question, unconsciousness will already know the answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just can't wait till it's going to be revealed to us. So we use the help of astrology or something else, someone else. So, and then when it's revealed to us, it's like, oh, it's so clear. Like, how else?
Yeah.
Yeah. I often get that.
And I guess people usually come to you when they have, like, I know I came to you when I was kind of rolling through some stuff where I was having some doubts, having some uncertainty about where my life direction was going. So I'm assuming that's probably when most people come to you, is when they are feeling kind of a little bit stuck.
I'll tell you something, mostly women come like that. Men, a lot of the times, basically come to see what the heck is this.
Yeah.
Men, very skeptical. And I know when they have a male client for the first time, I have to win him over. So from complete disbelief in this, you want to win his trust. So how you do it? You go into the past, something that already happened and something that you couldn't possibly know. So when he sees that he pulls this information from the chart and it's freaking impossible, then he starts understanding that there is something in that.
Yeah.
And that's usually the turning point. But I can tell you something, that men that you win this way in astrology, they become the most faithful clients. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's so funny.
When they start believing, not believing, when they start understanding, this is more important than believing, understanding how that works, because it's not really like a psychic work where you have to really trust the psychic. It's like going to the doctor, okay? When you have a certain sickness, what their doctor asks you to do the x-ray, to do the lab analysis, and based on this lab analysis and x-ray, he basically explained to you what's there. So if you don't like the doctor or you don't like the explanation, you can grab your x-ray and lab tests and go to another one, and he'll in his own way explain to you exactly the same thing. So that's how you know that there is a science behind it. In the same way, there is an astrology working. Okay, your chart is always your chart, regardless whom you bring in it to. An astrologer will be telling you exactly the same thing, just in different, slightly interpretation. And that's another interesting topic when we go into this. It's synastry. Synastry is the compatibility, astrological compatibility between people, okay? And it's not only like boyfriend, girlfriend things, it's much more than this, including the astrologer client. I have a lot of clients, like most faithful clients, they have almost the same risings. And they have very similar aspects because these people understand me as an astrologer better than others. So they get hooked on something that they understand better, okay? Sometimes the astrologer is not very compatible with the client, and that creates a certain issue.
Mm.
And it's not a question then of disbelief again in astrology. If you don't like the way astrology are explaining things to you, don't give it up. Try another one.
Right.
Try another one who probably will be more compatible to explain things to you. Because again, we are all people. Sometimes we understand someone better, someone we don't.
Mm-hmm.
It has zero to do with actual knowledge. Like, don't blame astrology because astrologer didn't explain to you it right, or because he had a mistake in interpretation. Because remember, astrological formulas always work, always.
Mm-hmm.
It's never a case when they don't.
Yeah.
It's only
Yeah.
a question of interpretation.
Yeah. And I feel like when you come to astrology, you also have to be open and ready for the information that you're about to receive as well. Because some of it, like, it can kind of like, there can be stuff that may throw you off with what does come forward.
Well, I actually had a case like this. I remember a friend of mine, well, the client of mine recommended me to another person. That person came to see me. I started to talk to her, and there are a lot of problems was in her chart. And she just interrupted me in the middle of it and said, "Excuse me, I came here to hear how wonderful my life is going to be, how I'm going to be rich and famous. And you tell me all of this BS? That's not about me." In two weeks later, her mom died.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I tried to prepare, but she didn't even let me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe that's a good idea, because you don't always want to be a deliverer of bad news, but sometimes you have to. I mean, when the person comes to you, you have to be honest. And of course, you have to be tactful.
Yeah.
Tactful, yeah. You have to be tactful. And with all of that work together, well, you can deliver really meaningful. And one thing that people have to understand, because a lot of people are afraid to come to astrology for that reason. The good astrologer will not only say to you that something is bad, he'll always provide the clues of how to make it better. That's the point of astrology. It's not just chronology, when you just say, you know, this is this and this is that. Astrology is always seeing things in perspective. And since there is a perspective, nothing is too late for those who still live in, right? So you can always turn things for the better. So when you see that there is a problem, when you see that something dreadful is coming, you simply look for what's next, how to get out of there, how to work it out with the best perspective. And frankly, when you learn astrology a lot or often, and turn to astrology often, a very interesting thing comes to understand, to be revealed to you. Nobody up there is really punishing us. You know what I mean? As many people, as many religions teach, you know, nothing like this. We're always given challenges that are supposed to teach us something. Okay, so it's up to us to actually learn or to block ourselves from learning. When we block, this is where the suffering starts. To remove the suffering, you have to unblock and see what someone upstairs tried to tell me.
Right.
Okay, and when you find the answer, there is no need for suffering. There is no, the exit from the situation appear by themselves. Or you can ask the help, like with astrology. And a lot of the time, I simply reveal to people what exactly is going on, why, and how to get out of there. And as soon as they see it, they already realize, well, this is not a dead end.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and it's so important not to have that like victim blame mentality, because if you have that going to anything in life, like it's going to continue being challenging and continue being hard. So I love that, how it really is like finding those solutions. And life is kind of like a game. Like that's the way that I see it. And like I know like I had some tough stuff that I went through as well, and it was like having this perspective, like it really allowed me to see it more of like a game. You know, it's like, okay, like this is coming up in my life. Like I have two options. I can either sit and complain and blame and be a victim of this, or I can like figure out a way to get around this and to learn the lessons. And when we don't learn those lessons, we continue looping back to receive those same lessons. So it's like, why not learn it this time right now and have like epic evolution in this lifetime, and do like literally like have the best life that I can on this planet and bring the value that I can to the world that I meant to in this lifetime. So that's so cool. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Yeah, literally, it's just so cool. All of it.
Well, there is no uncreative charts. There are people who never understood their creativity inside of themselves. Okay, there's like to say that there is no untalented kid. In the same way, there is no uncreative charts. There are people who never discovered how to use it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing about astrology. Like I was asked, and I actually love when people ask me these questions because that make them learn and make me understand how to explain it better. If the chart is influencing us so much, okay, then the question is, let's say in the moment when Leonardo da Vinci was born, at least 50 kids were born at the same time with the same chart. Why we know only one Leonardo? Okay, the answer for that is that there is a certain things that are prerequisited in the chart, which is what progressive astrology, for example, studies, okay? And I can do that as well for the clients. I love doing this, okay? Something that you cannot change, but there is a lot of things that you can. And that depends on how much you take your life into creative accounts, sort of like how much you're doing with it. So if you compare, I actually known one of my teachers made a whole like dissertations about it, astrological twins. That was his thing. Okay. Those who, I don't know if somebody would be watching me from Ukraine here, that's Kharkov astrologer, Felix Kazimirovich Velichko, his name is. Okay, so he actually did this and it's a very interesting work. Okay. It's exactly studying this, how people who have exactly the same charts have kind of different destinies. And when you analyze their biographies, you see interesting things, character as well. It's like the same thing working in a different level. So whatever paths Leonardo went, those who born with him in the same moment went the same path, but in a different level. Okay. So on which level your chart is going to work depends on your own efforts. So let's say there was one Leonardo who took those efforts, others just was sleeping through.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I guess like the progressive is like the past life stuff, right? Because everybody who's been born here has a different past life as well. So that influence.
Yeah, but progressive chart is about it's the main body of the predictive astrology. It consisted of three main steps. Okay, this is the bottom one, the foundation. Progressive chart is studies what you cannot change in your life. It's like when your soul is making the contract before coming here to this incarnation. Okay, there are certain points of the contract that the soul must perform. Okay, and cannot escape it. Okay, so that's what progressive chart is study. I always encourage people who are interested in predictions to start from that, because after that is because that overrides everything. I can find for you the perfect solar, but if your progression says that you're not going to have that luck now, it will override it. Okay? So it's important to study that simply to know what chapter right now you're supposed to work through. Okay, and then when you know what it is, you already know how to enhance it. You know what to change, what you can change in order to make what you have to go through in the best possible scenario, in the best possible option. Okay, astrology is all about studying options, but you study options after you see in boundaries of which you live. Those boundaries is a progressive chart.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because like with some of the stuff that can come up too, it's like it's like the emotional piece, right? It's like we can have the biggest like expanded view of what goes on, but we're still human and we still have these emotions that come up and we have to learn how to work through those emotions and stuff like that. And that's really what got me interested in the work that I do now with like all of the emotional clearing and stuff that I'm doing now and educating people on like how to utilize their emotions and allow them to flow and not have them so blocked so that they get stuck and trapped in our body. And we're living through all these behavioral loops based off of the emotional traumas that are stored in our body, because it does help you to be able to flow through these life events a lot with more ease as things come up in life, because we're all here and we're going to have different challenges in our life. It's just a matter of how we actually respond to the events that are coming up for us.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the things that are coming up in the chart like currently? Because there's massive changes that have been going on in the world over the last little bit. There's always massive stuff happening for the planet, but specifically the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's actually even started this year. And
Mm.
it's the year that I frankly was preparing for and trying to prepare people for quite a long time.
Wow.
What is happening is that starting from 2022, practically right from the beginning of the year, well, from February approximately, okay, the Neptune moved into the cluster of Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune. Neptune is the major planet that has a cycle of 170 years. But the most important thing is that it's a ruler of the last sign of the circle of evolution. The evolution on Earth is starting basically like from Aries, the circle finishing on Pisces. Aries is the youngest, Pisces is the oldest. So in Pisces, it is decided whether or not the spiral of evolution goes up or down.
Mm.
Whether we're going to evolve or degrade. Okay, it's more though clear like this for a personal chart. For the world is always evolving. It's never degrading. I mean, it has different waves and so on, but it's always sort of coming up slowly. Okay, but every time when we face in the world or in the transit situation, the Neptune transferring into Pisces, it becomes the time of the major exam. So Neptune, what it does. In the Chaldean astrology, it was known as an earth shaker. And for a reason. First of all, it's a planet that is always involved in calculating tsunamis, earthquakes, and so on. That's what it creates. But most importantly, it works like this in every aspect of life because it destabilizes the system. So how Neptune works, Neptune is really it's the planet that is creating sort of like the most intimate channel between God, creator, however you want to call it, absolute, okay, with us, our planet, depends what chart you take, a personal chart or the planetary chart, like what we're going through now in the transit situation, okay? So when the Neptune is in Pisces, something else is involved, is suddenly getting into our routine system, and things start raising havoc. Things do not work according to the logical routine way as they'd always been before. Okay, so it's an examination time. So everything that we've learned during this cycle, all the skills, talents, understanding, knowledge that we acquired, all comes to test. Okay, and it's really kind of the karmic judgment, if you like, for the earth, for us in principle, and so on. For everyone, this transit is going to affect us for the next 15, 20 years. While it's going through the Pisces, it's only the beginning now, and the world after it will never be the same.
Mm.
So how it works, really, you can actually study by, if you're interested in the politics or world events, how it started the war between Russia and Ukraine. Okay, something that was designated by the Russian government to happen in 3 days. Something went wrong in their miscalculation, and it appeared to be the full-scale war that now no one knows how to get out. Okay,
Right.
so something went wrong. It's like people didn't know what they're doing. There's something always gets involved, like an external force or external influence. Neptune always influences, whether it is a personal chart or a global chart, as an element of miracle. Something irrational is supposed to happen, something that cannot be evaluated in calculation before. That's why Neptune is the worst enemy of Mercury, planet of logic.
Mm.
Logic, business, trade, no. Neptune is everything that is unspeakable, everything that is art, visions, talents, okay, but also chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that destabilizes this system and forces you to use everything that you've learned, sort of like in an examinatory way.
Right.
Like, now we're going to test whether you actually evolved or not. And in the result of this test, either you become a completely new or renovated person or a country or whatever we're discussing here about, or you degrade, or even get destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing is going to be the same after it anymore. That's for sure. And always when the Neptune appears strong, we always see the upheaval of some sort of national ideas. In personal chart, for example, the strength of the Neptune, one of the things that it shows, especially in the earth and fire signs, is a nationalistic or national affiliation of the person, okay? So how much am I don't know, Spanish or French, or, what's in the, what it means for me, how much you identify yourself with your own ethnicity, with your own ethnic culture, and so on. All of that is Neptune as well. So every time the Neptune in the world is getting in power, we see this nationalistic ideas pronounced. Last time the Neptune was in Pisces, what we saw, for example, ideology. Communism appeared as an idea, okay, and then started to work itself out. The materialism appeared as an idea. Again, new ideology, but also, for example, the work of Friedrich Nietzsche in Germany that later on were used for the Nazist works of Germany, the ideology of Goebbels. He took the Nietzsche's ideas for a foundation. Okay, so all of that happens in the return during the return Neptune to Pisces. Okay, in the personal chart for every one of us, it's actually also the major destabilization, but it's also the appearance of something that we could not predict, like a miracle, some strange serendipities in our life. And in the house where the Neptune becomes ruler, therefore where he enters his own house, because it's Pisces, it's his own place, okay, becomes the target of that destabilization. So I would say for people who, if you know your own charts, who, for example, have Neptune as a ruler of the first 6, 8, and 10 houses, those 4, you will experience the major destabilization, okay? And I would say that you really should be very careful and probably seek some sort of like help or assistance, because it will be very difficult to understand things by the usual logic. The logic is, again, when Neptune is involved, logic doesn't work.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I guess like when things kind of destabilize, like seek help, like we don't have to go through all this stuff alone. And I think like on the big scale thing, like it's so exciting. The world needs such big changes for us to be able to come into like a new earth where things are more harmonious and more peaceful, because we can all see that this like whole violence and war thing is not, it's so old, it's like we're ready to move past this. So it's like interesting to see what will come out of this big time period. And when it comes to us individually, like you can really see how each of us have kind of like choice points, and like with, like you were saying about the creation that we have, yes, we have the kind of set things in our life, but we have so much creation in it. And every moment when we're making decisions, like I've been feeling it a lot lately, where it's like something will come up and it's like literally like it seems so obvious. I have like the option of going into like an old behavioral pattern or an old emotion or an old fear or an old like doubt or worry, or I can choose to trust, and I can choose to have faith, and I can have like belief in myself and trust myself that all of the work that I've done in my lifetime has prepared me, and other lifetimes has prepared me for the moment that I'm in right now. And I can choose that higher timeline, right? And it's like, if we all can start seeing life in that way, and that's why we have to be conscious about what we're doing and not just living in all these subconscious programs, because then we don't have the opportunity to actually see those choice points and choose different than what we normally do. But like being able to, more of us, when we start doing that and start choosing that timeline, knowing that we have the capacity, we have everything that we need, we've been given everything in our life right here in this now moment for whatever that choice point is that we have, like as a collective, that's where we are going to have that critical mass shift, where we are going to choose something greater for the planet. And it's going to be magical, but it's like, we just need more people on board, like choosing that higher timeline and choosing to believe in ourselves and choosing to have faith in the humanity and the planet, and that things will get better. And it will, like, I believe that it's definitely going to continue getting better.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The world is constantly evolving, but for the personal situation, this is the number one thing that you have to remember about Neptunic time. And by the way, it started in this year, 2022. It goes till the last of 2020s and most of 2030s. So it's a long period that we enter now. Okay. Now, during this period, okay, in houses where Neptune is ruling in your personal chart, okay, you'll be experiencing not only major destabilization, but also this is going to be the source of your personal change. The rule of thumb with the Neptune influence is who was nobody becomes everyone, who was not everything becomes no one.
Wow.
It completely shifts everything. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it shifts in principle where things that are seen as truth suddenly become seen as lie. Things that look black suddenly becomes known as white. It's a complete, like almost 180 degrees shift in terms of your approach, public approach towards certain things. Who was the hero before will start to be questioned. Who was the villain before might often appear during this time a hero. Okay, and vice versa, like this with everything. Okay, so that is something that you have to be aware of. Okay, I would say that during this time, it would be wrong to use the typical routine, well worked out before approaches, because the way things used to work before will not work anymore. Using the same methodics, mechanisms, same principles will only bring you the disappointment.
Right.
Okay, so I would say seek inside of you the new ways of doing things. Apply your own intuition. Think out of the box. This is the time for everyone to start doing this, especially in the areas where Neptune is going to be involved, where the Neptune is ruling in your chart. Okay, especially when it comes to the aspects. Okay, towards planets in your chart that Neptune on its way is going to make squares in opposition, you're going to have a major chaos. Nothing will work there anymore. Okay, you're going to have major disappointments when everything seems to be stable. You're going to have major reevaluations. That's another thing that Neptune does, reevaluations, okay, of everything, including your own self. And in the places where you're going to have trines and sextiles, you're going to have an incredible euphoria. Okay, but more importantly is conjunctions. If on its way, Neptune make conjunctions with your own planets, they are going to be those planets, and whatever they mean in your chart, are going to be under the great deal of examination, if you like. Okay, so yeah, that is something that everyone have to be prepared for. I would say the luckiest one probably are the people who have Neptune ruler of the 5th house, of the 11th house, of the 2nd house. Those people will have sudden discoveries of talents that are very much known, very much needed in the world right now. Okay, they can suddenly realize that they are artists out of the blue. They can realize that they are had always been creative, had always this creative load that they never really fully shown to the world or to themselves, even, and so on, and they start doing it. Okay, and as I said, I would very much I would very much advise people who have Neptune, the master of the 6th and 8th house, to seek help. Do not try to do things on your own. Because you're under major threat, especially when the Neptune is the master of the 8th house. Your actual life can be under threat.
Right. Right. Yeah. And all of this stuff is redirect. So it's better, the way that I see it is better to know and then be able to then work through the emotions and then redirect yourself and continue moving forward than have these big surprises come through. So thank you for sharing that, Dmitry. And I'm curious how all of this relates to like the age of Aquarius.
Well, first of all, Neptune is the elevator of Aquarius. It's a planet that in Aquarius sits on throne. Okay, so during the epoch of Aquarius, Neptune is actually going to be felt better than ever before. What Neptune does in Aquarius, okay, or for Aquarius, it's revealing the enigmas. Everything that has to be that was hidden, everything that was a fairy tale or enigma or mysticism suddenly becomes reality. Okay. So during this time, people will be, at least on theoretical level, discovering a lot of possibilities of the universe, of their own self, rediscovering our body as a certain mechanism, our psychic abilities, our spiritual abilities. All of that will no longer be just the preferences of New Age group, but it's going to be actually global. Okay, and it's going to be on a scientific level. Okay, plus during the epoch of Aquarius, Aquarius is a humanitarian sign. So It's going to be upheaval of the what is called liberal arts. Okay, so people who are interested strictly in economics and political science are going to be not that much popular in incoming ages. Okay, things like astronomy, astrology is going to be, at a certain point, even going to be taught at school.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, it's going to be something that is like a common knowledge, like everyone's supposed to know the basic anatomy about themselves. It will be understood in incoming years that everyone should know their own chart and how to operate it,
Mm-hmm.
at least on the basic level before you address the specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's all going to be a part of the reality, but for that a certain scientific, like it's going to be revealed scientifically, again, not just from the point of belief or ancient knowledge that says this and that. No, it's going to be like revealed through the modern methods, mechanisms, methodics that is going to prove that the ancient knowledge or ancient wisdom actually had a ground. That ground is going to show the skeptics that it's actually something not to trifle with.
Mm-hmm. And so how long is Aquarius? Because it just started, what, in 2020? When did it start?
Oh yeah. First of all, as I said, in these 20 years, we're going to have a major leap forward in that regard. Okay, a lot of you'll see that by the end of 2030s, okay, the civilization completely changes. I mean, the moods of the public will completely change. The understanding of what's good and what's bad and the hierarchy of values in the society will completely change, okay? People will move towards much more communitarian approach. Things like corruption is going to be a major threat, and everyone is going to basically stand up against it, okay? The whole thing going to be reorganized the way that a lot of people who like oligarchs and so on, and oligarchy as an event in the society is going to be diminished. Okay, Aquarian is the sign where the word we are much more important than the word I. Everything that has to do with I is represented by sun in astrology, which in Aquarius is debilitated, which means I no longer exist in the epoch of Aquarius. It's we.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything for the common good. Okay, it sounds a little bit more like a communistic approach, but in communistic approach, it's actually there are boundaries everywhere that doesn't really allow your creative individuality to flourish. So it's not going to be like this. It's all going to be about flourishing individualities, but as a group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Something that is supposed to benefit in something, not just personally you or someone else, but everyone. How to change things that in the society that it's beneficial for everyone in every aspect. That's what it's going to be about. In a way, sort of like a Norwegian system that already exists. You know, the discovery of gas and oil there appear to be that it's in the hands of like the nation owns it, not a specific person. In result, everyone's benefited.
Right.
Okay. So we already have kind of a predicament of what's going to be like for everyone. Well, that's where the world is going to be going.
Right. Right. Which I guess, like, it's a huge time of opportunity.
Resources belong to everyone,
Yeah.
regardless which ones, okay? And it's going to be even across the countries. By the way, countries in the epoch of Aquarius are not going to exist anymore. We're going to be all citizens of Earth.
Mm.
Okay, so that is going to be like, it will be interesting, I guess, sort of like studying in ethnic cultures and all of that, but it's going to be more like forms of art and the actual reality of living. Okay, so that's another thing that is going to happen. But again, of course, all of that will take a long time, and most of it will not be able to see in our lifetime. That will come again.
Yeah,
we always do.
yeah.
Okay? And see the world in that state.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting. We're kind of at like the beginning of all of this big shift. So like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening, but like, it's exciting. Like
everything that going on this world with opening borders, with creating like European unions and other unions, with expatriations, all of that is already serving that. Okay. Globalization is going to take place, but not in the form where this term was actually invented as an economical form. It's going to be much more liberal form, humanitarian form. Okay.
Mhm.
Things like organizations, like, for example, like UNESCO, going to expand its influence because it will be understood that culture of one country is need to survive because it's possessed by all the people on the globe. Okay, and it's important for everyone. Okay, so the value of that is going to be understood, not just the value of this country, but
Mhm.
the whole globe. And culture is going to be raised on a different level in general on the globe. Okay. And with Aquarius, by the way, is the sign of technology. Okay, so technology is going to flourish. It's going to take over the planet to the point that most of the work that people don't want to do these days, okay, will actually be done by machines.
Mhm.
And will be sort of like left for any kind of creativity that we choose ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, everything else will be done by others.
Yeah.
Okay, and the same thing, by the way, will actually happen to the relationships. People no longer are going to be dependent so much on the interactual relationship between each other because surrogate's going to be there.
Because what, sorry?
Surrogate's going to be there, sort of like machine personality that you can
Right.
infuse with personality that you want and even edit it later on. So you can have a husband or wife, whatever, of your own choice, and it's programmable.
Such a weird world we're going into.
So yeah, then people will actually interact on a friendly basis and not so much dependent on,
Yeah.
sexual complexes and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice because then we get to do things because we want to do things, not because we have to do things anymore. Like it really is. It's going to be a world of creation where we actually have a lot more say as to what we choose to do in our life, who we spend time with, what's in our environment. And when you can start doing that, like there's so much more joy and so much more love and so much more like peace that comes with having that ability to do that. But like obviously it takes that releasing control and releasing attachments and releasing all of the old ways of logical boxes that we've lived in for our whole life. We've got to freaking shatter that in order to actually see the potential of what is coming, or else it is going to be tough. It's going to
And you
be hard.
see, the world already has technology sort of this high and morality only this high. So that's what Neptune in Pisces is going to take over, to take care of.
So it's
Okay,
going to
that's
create
what this destabilization is all about. That's why those who got there in unfair way are going to be punished by Neptune, so to speak. That's where the things that's supposed to be secretive going to be revealed.
Yeah.
And not by someone specifically. It's going to be the whole set of weird serendipities. Like someone upstairs, simply, decided to get involved. That's how the time of Neptune is always felt. That someone up there is suddenly getting involved. Before it was sleeping and sort of letting things go by themselves. That suddenly there are all kinds of events that logically cannot be explained somehow take place. Some of them going to be very destructive, but in the end, you will see even where the destruction has happened, it was for the good.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like with all the systems that have been in place with education, stuff like that, like we've been so sheltered to what life is really about. Like there's so much more to life than we could ever imagine. Like it's a lifelong journey of exploring it.
Neptune is co-ruler with the Jupiter in all the signs. For those who know the Vedic astrology very well, know that Jupiter is often sometimes even translated as guru, Brihaspati guru. Okay, so Jupiter always shows the way to enlightenment. So the reason why it always shares the influence with the Neptune in the signs is because Neptune is like a highest form of Jupiter. Okay, it's when the divine laws appear here and in a mysterious way lead towards enlightenment, okay, without actually teaching and telling you the information and knowledge like Jupiter does, okay, but by showing you, by making it impossible not to make those discoveries on your own. That's what Neptune does, okay. It inspires you to make, to basically awaken your own Jupiter.
So awaken your own guru.
Yeah.
Like we are our own gurus, which is so cool. Yeah, we have all the wisdom inside of us. So it really is just awakening that and bringing it to the world.
But the process, of course, of destabilization is something very far from pleasant. And what's going on in Ukraine right now is a very good picture of that. It's Neptune usually brings tragedies.
How's your mom doing?
It shakes the world that way.
Yeah. How's your mom doing?
So far, so good.
That's okay.
but
Yeah.
I mean, survives. But the city is heavily bombed. And yeah, we kind of like living each day at a time.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, my heart goes out to you and your family over there.
Thank you.
I think it brings out a huge point too, as well, because everybody's going to be going through such different realities right now that compassion and like really like being in your heart space and not in your mind where there's all this segregation and it's like right or wrong or good or bad or all of these things, like really living from our heart, you know, and really, like you said, like seeing people as human, like we're all coming together on a global scale. We are all human beings. It doesn't matter how much money you make, what your salary is, like what your job is, like all of these different aspects that we've been taught in this society that make you like in a hierarchy. Like the hierarchy is falling and we're really starting to see everything as like we're all equal. We're all here on this planet wanting to have a good life and live and enjoy and all of these things. So how can we come together in these times?
And that's an interesting thing of looking at it again from the Neptunic perspective, because destabilization is going to take place in climatic ways and geographical ways. Their lands will be sliding. There will be tsunamis, there will be earthquakes, and people will be forced to understand the only way we can survive on this planet is together. We could each bites by himself. No, we can't.
Yeah.
So we have to look for each other. And if we don't do that, and if we each one bites up, those people who can't unite with others, they'll be dying out.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way. And that's Aquarian logic there behind it. I mean, Aquarius is supposed to bring the world together. And another thing, by the way, about the Epoch of Aquarius, and I frankly don't know exactly how it's going to work, but that's what's in the cards, so to speak. During the Epoch of Aquarius, the world is divided in black and white. Okay, so we're going to have two major division between two, so to speak. There will be when you look at the symbol of Aquarian, it's a man who is, that's why it's called Aquarius, or Aquarian, okay, that is pouring from two vessels the water. One is the water of life, one is the water of death. So Aquarius is dividing the world on night and day. You know, if you look at the astrology from the point of Genesis, you know, when the God was creating the world, so to speak, okay, the point of Aquarius is when the night and day were separated, darkness and light. Okay, so that is what's going on to be on our planet. There are going to be a strict division between two completely different mentalities. Okay, and one mentality will be against another, believing that they are righteous.
Right.
And sooner or later, it's going to be one, because another one will have to die out, not because it's been conquered by another, but because their own system of values will prove them to be wrong.
Right.
That's how it's going to be.
Right. Yeah.
And for Vedic astrologers, they know that Aquarius is the sign of Saturnian Mulatrikona, which gives the golden age, so to speak. So the path to the golden age is actually also in the Epoch of Aquarius.
The golden age
is evolving, and there is no way of breaking it, you know, making it slower or something, or stopping it.
It's a rocket ship. Hop on board or get left behind, I guess, at this point. Yeah, the world's going, it's shifting, it's going where it's meant to go. And, you know, it's like, it's going to be a lot of tough decisions and tough things to go through, but everything's always working in the highest good of the planet and of humanity and everything. So yeah, thank you for sharing all that.
Anytime.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share? That's been amazing.
Ask questions. That is something, by the way, that I would ask, like people, like if somebody is interested, like ask questions, even general questions, like, or anything concrete, like how Aries goes with Cancer.
Right.
I'll tell you what I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess if anybody that's listening to this or watching the video has specific questions, if you want to put them in the comments of the YouTube video or the podcast, and we can always do another, we can have Dmitry back on and answer those specific questions in order to do that. And then we can always come back on and do another do another recording of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause there's literally like, there's endless questions. I guess advice, like if you were to give like some advice right now to people kind of moving through this time, what is it that you would share?
To go through this time, again, since it's a Neptunic time, you have to tense your intuition. Do not rely anymore on the routine stuff that used to work for you always before, especially in the areas where in your chart the Neptune is ruling. To know those areas and to know where your Neptune, I mean, you can do the chart yourself. It's there are softwares online, or you're always welcome. I can do it for you. My website, you can probably point out on the under the video and so on. And I'll be happy to do it for you.
Amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. Well, thank you so much, Dmitry,
You're
coming on here and sharing more about astrology, more about your story, more about all of these crazy intense times that we're going through, and kind of providing that bigger scope, that bigger look as to where the world is headed, so that people can kind of learn more about it and dive into it. But yeah, Google astrology, like Google it, ask questions like Dmitry said, and just keep exploring.
The general advice that I would give to everyone at this time of our global events is think out of the box. It's time. No longer go by what parents taught you, by what life before taught you, and so on. Start using your intuition, start thinking out of the box. Start to feel the people, the world around you, and start acting differently. How exactly your intuition will show. If you don't know, if your intuition is silent, if you need help awakening it, there are lots of people like me, like Laura, who can do it, who can help.
Yeah, our ideas, everything is so needed right now to come forward to the world. So thank you so much, Dmitry, for just like following your path and bringing astrology to the world and impacting my life so greatly. You helped me through like quite a lot of tough stuff the last couple of years, and it's just like been so grateful kind of having that heads up as to what I was moving through, and having that support and that guidance through that, and just being here and helping all of your clients and stuff. So if anybody wants to book a call with Dmitry to have your chart read and ask questions about your own specific chart, right now, I'll put the link down below so that you can book a consultation call with him. He is here in Ottawa, so you can do it in person here in Ottawa, and he also does it online. So you can do it from wherever you are in the world, and feel free to reach out to me as well if you're wanting help with a spiral or anything like that. But yeah, we're here for you. You're not alone in this, and it's an exciting time that's upon us if we choose to see it that way. So thank you again, Dmitry, for coming on here.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you so much. Amazing. And for everybody listening, thank you so much for listening. If you found value in what we shared today, please feel free to share out this episode, get this information out there. The more people that hear this information, the more they can really get prepared for what's coming in their life and make the most out of what is coming. So feel free to share it out to anybody who would value from it, and get all of this out to the world. So keep doing your thing, and we've got this. So I'll see everybody on the next episode. Thanks so much again, Dmitry.
You are welcome.